And we're live.
All right, welcome back, committee. 11 a.m. We are taking some further testimony on H17, an act relating to the approval of the adoption of the charter of the town of Morristown. We did our walkthrough with legislative council last week. A couple of questions popped up. So if folks have notes on that, please go back to those pages. And we are joined remotely with Chris Palermo, select board member, and Brian Moynihan, lawyer for the municipality. Gentlemen, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So going back to our notes, we had a couple of questions. I guess why don't we start off just with you guys introducing yourselves. Did anybody kind of cue you up on what our curiosities were within the charter? I mean, it's not a big charters.
Yes, I did. This is Chris Palermo, and welcome from sunny Morristown here. I put together sort of a narrative for your committee today, kind of explaining how we got here and hopefully answering some of the questions that I viewed over committee testimony in prior meetings, and I'm happy to share that with you if you'd like me to.
Yeah, no, please, that would be wonderful.
Okay, Brian, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure, I'll just introduce myself briefly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. I'm Brian Moynihan. I'm an attorney in Burlington with the law firm Moynihan Safar. I represent municipalities around the state. It's work that I've been doing for about 25 years. So we work for municipalities like cities, towns, villages, including the town of Morristown, all over the state of Vermont. And I live in Williston with my family. So with that, I'll let Chris talk. And I did have some prepared comments, brief, and then was hoping to be available for questions of the committee if need be. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd start by thanking the committee for this opportunity to testify on behalf of the town of Morristown regarding H17, the proposed town of Morristown charter. Just some background on myself. My name is Chris Palermo. I currently serve as vice chair on the Morristown Select Board. As a former longtime resident of Waterbury, I served as a member and vice chair on the Waterbury Select Board for 16 years. Prior to that, I was a member and chair of the Waterbury Town Planning Commission. In watching prior testimony and committee discussion on our charter proposal, I am aware that there are questions regarding section 3, A and B, town manager responsibilities, particularly the last sentence in part B. As our town clerk treasurer gave testimony prior and sort of gave a narrative about the history, the town of Morristown Select Board appointed citizens and town staff to work with the Select Board as a charter committee to develop Morristown's very first charter. The decision was to make this proposal simple and straightforward, and then take time to thoughtfully and thoroughly develop any amendments that would enhance the operations of our community. The final draft presented to the Select Board and ultimately to the voters, town voters, utilized legislative approved language from several municipalities. The language selected by the committee and the board was felt to best represent what our goals are in our new town manager form of government. In my 18 years of municipal experience, I've witnessed firsthand how valuable tenured department heads are in the management of personnel, budgets, and day-to-day operations. They command the respect of the employees and are present in the trenches literally every day and night. By giving the manager the ability to authorize a department head to hire, appoint, discipline, or remove an employee subject to the manager's discretion and supervision respects the department head's expertise and experience in their vocation. We feel that this does not diminish the town manager's responsibilities in any way under state statute. Rather, it's meant to enhance the manager's ability to perform them by collaboratively working with the manager's leadership team. Additionally, this does not supersede the town personnel policy, and it does not supersede the 2 current union agreements or the 3rd union agreement currently being negotiated in the town of Morristown. As the chief executive officer of a municipality with all the different tasks that are demanded, Allowing the manager to exercise the ability to engage department heads in these decisions is an invaluable asset in our opinion. Reviewing a number of municipal charters, the committee, the select board, and ultimately town voters by a measure of 5-to-1 margin feel this represents how we would like to move forward as a community. We hope that you will support our municipality in the approval of our first charter. Thank you.
And you said that it passed on a 5-to-1 margin, was it?
It is. So under that section, there was 2,404 votes cast. 2,002 said yes. 402 said no. Our total checklist in the town of Morristown is 4,453 voters. The number of ballots cast on this election was 55.1% of the checklist. So we had a substantial margin in terms of approval, and we had a really significant turnout in voters. 55.1% is truly unheard of.
If you don't mind, could you send those numbers, email them to our committee assistant? We just like to have those on hand.
You actually have them
Is it on
already.
there?
Yeah,
It's in the chart.
PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was looking at the wrong doc. Never mind. Thank you for doing that for us.
Sure.
It's in the PowerPoint and the chart.
Thank you.
It should be on the last page of the PowerPoint that I sent over. It's a new page from the prior testimony.
Yeah. Any questions from anybody for this portion? All right. So duties. We still wanted to discuss with like the one piece that was uniform with Waterbury. So that's the duties of the town manager. The other piece was the language that the other piece was the language that was borrowed from Waterbury.
Yes.
And when you were reviewing other charters, because that apparently is something that was unique in the Waterbury charter that was approved last session.
Correct.
So I guess it just as the architects of this, what did you folks, as you were examining language from other municipalities, what did you find us so alluring about that to put into this?
Well, I mean, again, and I was a major proponent in including this language in the charter, based on my personal experience and how it's worked. One could possibly argue that without that sentence in there that allows the manager to collaborate with department heads, would a manager be able to do that with or without that language in a charter? Since we are in a municipality that has 3 unions, we just wanted to make sure that as we walk down the path of collaboration with our department heads and the manager, that we fully disclosed what our intents are. And I know that Waterbury's language is unique. I think maybe they're the only municipality up to this point that has that language in there. But in careful deliberation with the board, the charter committee, and the voters, we felt that this was a valuable piece to have in our toolbox in our charter at this point.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the first part of that? Did you say that it's because the municipality has unionized employees?
No, I think that what we wanted to make sure is that when we walk down the path of allowing the manager to collaborate with department heads and give them some autonomy, only under the provision that the manager was involved, that we just wanted to be clear that if there was a discipline that was taking place, that the department head and the manager had that ability, no matter what happened in terms of negotiations with unions or grievances to the select board.
I guess I'd probably want to know more about that? Like, are there specific instances that you would be thinking of that you could give us examples of?
No, I can't. I mean, we've had actually really very good negotiations with our unions. And again, I've been on the board for 2 years now. I've been part of the highway union negotiation and really feel that we have a great relationship with the unions. We're in our third union agreement, the admin as well as the ambulance service, EMS service is decided to unionize as well. To be honest with you, as you're all well aware, the contentiousness surrounding municipal budgets and school budgets, that, last year alone, we went through 3 budget provisions, 3 budget votes before we finally got a budget passed. There is a sentiment that we need to cut positions, lower taxes and such. And honestly, I think municipal employees got nervous about their tenure and their ability to remain in their jobs and have decided to unionize. But honestly, my experience so far, and this is my first experience with unions in a municipality, the negotiations and conversations have been very amenable.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a piece I think we should definitely talk a little more in depth
Mhm.
on that. Anything to add, Mr. Monahan?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's important for this committee to recognize that there's a context in which the town of Morristown is operating. The context is the general legal authority that the legislature has already granted to town managers. Town managers have a statutory chapter in Title 24. It's Chapter 37, and it spells out in a fair amount of detail sort of the overall powers and authorities of the town manager. So my view of what Morristown is now looking to do is that this proposal by Morristown, the authority to do this probably already exists in Vermont general law governing town managers. Because when a municipality adopts the town manager form of government, it means that the select board loses its day-to-day operating authority, and that transfers on to a manager. But the reason Morristown is looking now to do what it is doing is to take Vermont general law one step further, to make it clear that the manager has the ability to exercise these authorities, but also the manager, in sort of consultation with his or her department heads, has the power to transfer some of this authority to a trusted department head if he or she so desires. And arguably that authority already exists. This is not an expansion of the town manager's authority in any way. This is just taking the power that the legislature has already granted to managers and making it very clear that if the manager wants to make some of these powers more diffuse, the manager is authorized to do that. The beauty of that from our perspective is that it makes that power clear. Arguably, it keeps attorneys out of the mix and reduces the resource spend for the municipality, because if there are grievances or arbitrations on this issue, at least, it will be clear that this is a power that the manager has. So this is really not an expansion of the manager's powers in any way. And I also know from speaking with the Morristown town manager that the effort here is really only to make clear that if the manager wants to exercise this authority and say to the fire chief, the police chief, or the director of public works, any department head who is sort of simpatico with the manager in terms of management styles and policy directives that they've gotten from the select board, that the department head is empowered to take those decisions. Arguably, this is something that would increase protections for employees. So for example, in the unionized context, employees have customarily a significant due process protection. That's always a customary part of the collective bargaining agreement. And it says before the employer can discipline the employee, we've got to go through a grievance process, and the employee is entitled to grieve it, usually with the frontline supervisor, then with the department head or somebody else in the department, then maybe the department head, then maybe the town manager, and then perhaps the select board before it's eligible to go to an arbitrator. So arguably, this could create another step where another person could adjust a grievance. So my view of this is that while this also is calibrated to increase efficiency for the manager, it also ensures that employee due process rights are protected through this process. So, my general thoughts are that this is simply a clarification of existing powers. It's not an expansion of existing powers. It's good for the employer and it's good for employees.
No, I understand the point you're trying to make, Counselor. So myself and Vice Chair Hango spent several years in our labor committee. So some of the stuff you're noodling on is not unfamiliar with us. So I think I want to check in with our Letch Council labor attorney just to walk through this to make sure we're all understanding it the same way. I do see how you're painting the picture that is like streamlining the operations to create less like sort of ambiguity. The town manager can have more authority to delegate. All of those things make sense to me. But then again, I'm just some guy who owns a restaurant. So I like to check with the attorneys. And I had another question and I lost it. Does anybody have any other thoughts or questions to share with these folks while I recalibrate my brain? No. So with this, personal rules approved by the
Mr. Chairman, I could just make one other comment if you don't mind.
Oh, please.
When I was engaged to appear today, one of the questions posed to me, and I don't know exactly where it came from, but I thought there was some question in the committee about whether this proposal would have any impact on labor laws. And I gave that some thought, and my view is that no, it doesn't. All our labor laws, certainly at the state level, remain intact. The Vermont PFLA, the Vermont Fair Employment Practices Act, all of those statutes stay wholly in place. This is separate. This just makes clear who at the management level has what authority and when the manager has the very clear authority to delegate portions of that authority. Does not impact any of the important rights that employees have to protections to take sick leave or other leaves or be protected from discrimination. All of that stuff is wholly intact.
Okay, so that you're speaking to exactly what I want to check in with our council. Was to make sure that this didn't create any ambiguities or barriers or hiccups. Just because this seems to be relatively unique. Also, are there other charters that have this section as well? This language in B?
I didn't have too much time to look, and all I know is that the town of Waterbury adopted the same language. I know from Chris they grabbed that from there. I would just draw a corollary, which is this. In a lot of municipalities historically, this is changing, but for a long time, there were many municipalities that didn't have a manager. They had an administrator. And the administrator was sort of this, I'll call it a made up position. It was a situation where the select board said, we're too busy to do the sort of day-to-day stuff that happens in a municipality. So we're going to get an administrator we're going to give them some authority. We're going to give them some of the statutory authority that we have as select board members. And we're going to delineate that authority in probably a job description or a memo or something like that. So it was a scenario where the select board said, we're taking some of our authority and we're handing it to you. That's something that's been happening for 50 or 100 years in the state of Vermont. And it's been happening without any oversight by this legislature. What Morristown is looking to do is really just a very explicit adoption of that principle.
Okay. No, I understand the point you're trying to make, Counselor. So I guess what our next step will be is to just sort of like ask for an assessment on that from our labor attorney in legislative council, and then confer with our lead counsel on this. He's not in the building today. But he is watching us in the YouTube ether. So if there aren't any other questions from folks, we'll start doing our legwork on this and then circle back to you, gentlemen, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay, no worries. I really appreciate the time, the thought, and the effort. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, who's doing labor over the Ledge Council now? Is Cam? Right?
Sophie,
She labor? Or Cam is doing labor in
I
housing?
don't know Cam.
He's the one from, came over from DOL.
I'm not sure. Sorry.
Okay. Anyhow, all right, if that's it, Autumn, go ahead and take us off. We'll